Good evening. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, and it's a great crowd. Thank you so much for being here tonight at the Jewish Museum. My name is Darcy Alexander. I'm the chief curator here at the museum, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the Gertrude and David Fogelson lecture program. It's really my great pleasure tonight to introduce Anish Kapoor this evening, who's been on site with us all week, and it's been an extraordinary opportunity for all of us. We've been working with him on an installation, which is going to be opening in just a few days across the hall. And the exhibition really focuses on early work from the 70s and 80s, and that's also going to be his topic this evening. I'm joined by my co-curator, Shira Backer, in extending our deepest thanks to the artist and his family, who are here in spades, which is fabulous, his studio team, Listen Gallery, and many, many others who helped to make this exhibition a reality. Introductions like these often begin with a roundup of the artist's biography and many accomplishments, and this would certainly be appropriate here were it not for the fact that such an overview could hold us up for hours, literally. So extraordinary has this artist's career been over the years. It's included exhibitions and installations at some of the world's most prominent institutions, the Tate Modern in London, the Accademia in Venice, the Sir Alves Foundation in Porto, Pinakotheka in Munich, and many, many more, as well as unforgettable public works such as the well-known to Americans especially, Cloudgate, which is featured in Chicago in Millennial Park. Add to this countless publications and awards from winning the Turner Prize in '91 onwards, and you have someone who has reached an enduring level of recognition and achievement that is hard to match in any field, let alone the visual arts with its ever-shifting audiences and markets. Our task here at the Jewish Museum has not been to tackle these many themes over a long career, but rather to ask a simple question: where did it all begin? How did this artist, born in India to a mother of Iraqi Jewish heritage and a Hindu father who trained in London at Hornsey College in the early 70s, develop such a confident, singular practice seemingly from the get-go? When Shira and I began to put the show together a few years ago in collaboration with the artist, we wanted to keep the answer to that question very focused by zeroing in on a select group of works that, in many ways, I think, established a visual language that has been with the artist for decades. These are the so-called pigment works, as they're known, color-saturated objects arranged singularly or in combinations that seem to float on the gallery floor, surrounded by halos of raw pigment in reds, blues, blacks, yellows, whites. When I first encountered these works in person over a decade ago, I'd never seen anything like them before, and they continue to mystify and mesmerize those who encounter them. We very much look forward to welcoming Anish to the stage to talk about how these beautiful, fragile objects came to life, what he was trying to do when he made them, and how they might be understood today. So welcome, Anish. We're thrilled to have you here with us tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Darcy. I'm going to start by a little sentimentally, if you don't mind. I want to thank my darling wife, Umima, for all her love and support, and for all the hard work she. And I have to mention my children, Alba, Ishan, Habiba, and our little boy, Ilyas, who are wonderful and joyful and bring love and goodness. Darcy, thank you. James, thank you. Shira, wherever you are, thank you. Megan and the incredible team here, I've got to say, thank you. Clint for doing the lighting, which I hope you'll see in there is subtle and done with grace. Alex Logsdale, wherever you are, and your papa, Nicholas, Elissa, who's come all the way from London Anyway, bless you. And Greg, of course, Greg Hilty. And my team from the studio, Lucy Adams, and Hector, and Angus. Anyway, okay, I'm going to start, if I may, with this. This is a drawing, Darcy, that maybe we should have had in the show, and I didn't think of it. Am I starting in the right place? Oh. What happens? Yikes. Wrong way. I'm probably going the wrong way. There we go. Got it. So this is 1973. I was 19 years old, just beginning art school, and computers were unheard of. I found this guy who knew how to make a computer drawing, and I asked him if he could turn a square into a circle. And it's a simple, stupid idea at one level, but it's everything I've ever touched is right here. And then, oh God, am I going to get this the wrong way around again? No, yes. A whole series of drawings that relate to this idea. What does it mean as a 19, 20-year-old to be an artist? I didn't have the courage to call myself an artist. I just did this stuff. Being an artist is a responsibility, and I take that very, very seriously. I'll tell you why through this brief talk. I then decided that I wanted to see if I could explore this bodily, so this idea. So I began and made a series of performance works with a friend, and we did square and circle performances. What emerges? What emerges? Of course, one of the first things that emerged, this is Italian feminists in 1973, I think, showing the hand, of course, in this gesture of the female, which I think is wonderful and powerful. But of course, what does it say? It says something about what I was trying to explore, I'm still exploring, which is the hand of the artist. And there are two views of the hand of the artist. One is that the hand of the artist is everything, because it's the thing that connects that and that to the world. And the other is that the hand of the artist is overrated. It's irrelevant. That there's something else that takes place. I rather like that idea, that there's something else that takes place. What else? And that, I think, is a key question. So this is one of the works in the show here, the hand, almost like a primitive, I say, that's a terrible word, but yes, you know what I mean. The caves of Paleolithic human beings in Australia, that's the first sign. There it is. So the hand is everything, or maybe the hand is nothing. Anyway, I'm going to go on with this. Yep. I have a deep, deep conviction that the artist has nothing to say. And I think that's very, very important. Too many of my colleagues have too much to say, I'm afraid. And it gets in the way. The great symbolist poet, Paul Valéry, said, and I think it's momentous, a bad poem is one that vanishes into meaning. Ooh, just think of that. So therefore, what's a good poem? A good poem is one that sits in this curious space between meaning and no meaning. What does it do? It speaks to human consciousness. It's highly democratic, in other words. What it does is it says, here's the possibility of maybe a meaning, but you, the viewer, have to come and finish that circle. Because if you don't, it isn't. And if I've got something to say, well, who cares what I've got to say? It just gets in the way. And it isn't, to my view, great art. So this thing there that sits between, and I think that's what being a young artist or any artist is about, looking for that space between meaning and no meaning, the possibility of meaning. So I began to explore further this notion of the body as a multivarious place, both male and female. Doing it in a very simple, straightforward way, with objects, with bits of body, with I think that's part of the joy, without looking too much to how precisely a thing's made, or want an open practice, and that's what I was looking for. Also, remember, this is the early 70s when this was possible, so it was possible to, if you like, draw in space. But of course, I mentioned the word consciousness. Consciousness is one of the big subjects. Science has done a lot, but science doesn't come anywhere near consciousness. Doesn't really come to hold what is this thing that separates, that gives us human beings this. The Buddha had a very good way of talking about it. The Buddha talked about consciousness as being like a cart made of wheels, whatever you call it, the trunk bit, the bit that carries the stuff, and it's only a cart when you put them all together. Until then, it's bits. And I suspect that holds some reality, that we kind of construct this strange, wonderful thing that is consciousness, and we share it with each other. It's part of the beauty of human interaction, of human possibility. I'm looking for it. So what I do, make a chair, throw a chair together, put some magazines in it, roll some bits of paper up, and see, does that go somewhere? Can it go somewhere? A drawing from that period of time. This is again 73, 4, something like that. So I'm 20-year-old, a kid, basically. A stool with some plates. So, too much, in a way, I'm going to say that I have nothing to say, and here I am, I'm trying to tell you I have nothing to say, and here I am telling you all sorts of stuff about what I have to say, all the time, consciousness and all this blah, but really, it's about opening the practice, opening myself, opening oneself up to the possibility. Good, bad, indifferent, well, who cares? My journey, especially as a young artist, even now, is to keep opening my practice. Here, works that begin to explore the other real important issue. I believe, and I have come to believe, and this is not retrospective, this is, I've come to believe, that we are truly deeply religious beings, that we carry, if you like, religious consciousness. We die. We have this sense that there is something else, or maybe there is something else. And part of the if you like, that side of our consciousness, our self, is ritual. So looking to make works that speak of ritual practice. Sticks with balloons on them or whatever they are, calling out, almost literally mouthing with a bowl on a chair, kind of pouring liquid. Don't forget, I grew up in India, so that's part of this deep human practice somewhere. Yep. I wish I had these works. They don't exist any longer. So, it's kind of nice that they've gone too. Here's a work I called Table of Dreams. This sort of form, which I've returned to many, many times since then, cut into the table, and then these wings made of cloth coming out of it. And then, Marcel Duchamp. Marcel Duchamp's great work, according to me, greatest work, according to me, is The Large Glass. Why? Because it's alchemical, or at least uses alchemical language, speaks of this oppositeness. The top half of the glass is male, female, I get confused anyway, and they speak to each other, this meta language. And I'm translating Marcel Duchamp into two parts. She's over there, he's over here, and there's this machine on the floor that taps away like that. So fundamental opposites. This is a work I made much, much later on. I'm useless at this anyway, sometime. What does it say here? In the early 2000s, I think, called Shooting into the Corner. Same thing, same idea as that previous work I just showed you. With so it's a cannon that shoots into the corner and shoots this red wax. Of course, I'm a colorist, and I've come to understand that color is essential. And these are pellets made that are loaded into the cannon, and there's a shot every, 5-10 minutes. The violence of it is essential. And of course, it's about this, or rather referring to this oppositeness. It's also referring to painting and what painting practice is, color, and what it does or doesn't do. I love how mad it is, too, of course. Going back to student work, a work called About a Girl, for obvious reasons. And I think one of the things that I look to have explored in this early work is, if you like, my feminine side. When I was a young artist and beginning to be known, people didn't know where I was from, and often wrote or didn't know what that I was male, and wrote about me as a woman artist. I loved it. I got to say, I love that. Anyway, a drawing from about that period, and one last student work. Again, a little machine on the floor tapping away. All these broken objects. Most of them are cannons, so they're very phallic. And this screen, and on the other side, a series of shelves with little bells on them, which this drawing refers to, also in the show. Anyway, then I don't know what happened to me. Something happened to me, and I came across this material and felt that it was where things could be. I'd lived in England for 7 or 8 years by then, and felt that somehow or the other, I was just an artist like all the other artists, the same. And then it suddenly occurred to me that maybe I wasn't, that I had something else to explore. So I went to India, went back to India after a few years of living in the UK, and suddenly saw that all this stuff that I thought I was working with was there. And it confused me. Anyway, I came back and started making works out of pigment. They're mostly objects that are geometric and are in pairs. Sometimes a drawing, sometimes a little bowl, sometimes other objects. And they slowly began to form themselves more and more clearly. And I came to call them 1,000 names. So that allowed me, they were all called the same thing, 1,000 names. That allowed me the freedom to work with them and continue to work with them in all sorts of ways. And some of them just remained in the studio. Now, I never showed them. Other ones went out into the world eventually and did something else. Of course, drawing is an essential part of this program. Why drawing? Why objects, if you like, made with chalk and powder? I like the idea of them being utterly ephemeral, of to touch them was to destroy them. It's as if they sit. It'll become more obvious later. Anyway, a drawing or two from that period. One of these is, I think, or some of these are in the show. And then they began to form pairs, mostly in classic opposites, red and white. I began to see that these objects aren't just, I'll wait till I go to a better slide, yes, that these objects aren't just the bit you see. That I began to feel that they're like icebergs. Most of the object is hidden under the ground or behind the wall, somewhere else. I like that idea of the invisible object, of the half-revealed, of the potential. And slowly they began to coagulate into more complex arrangements. Still 1,000 names. This is the first kind of conglomerate group of objects as one work. So the ritual of laying these objects out is a very, very important part of what they are and how they work. Their relationship with each other, their fragility, of course. Drawing from that period. And this is, yep, I can never remember what these works are called, which is good. And of course, even though this is a blue one, I need to talk about red, don't I? This work is actually called Part of the Red. I began to form a kind of symbolic language where red is always at the center, and blue and yellow are part of red. yellow is as if the passionate part of red, and blue is the hidden part of red. There's a work which is called As If to Celebrate, I Discovered a Mountain Blooming with Red Flowers. It's a modified haiku poem, sort of. And I'm interested, of course, in the emergence of these objects as if, as the title says, as if to celebrate. I discovered a mountain, as if it just emerged out of uncalculated consciousness. I think that's the space that the artist, the poet, has to deeply allow themselves. It's the only thing that matters in the end. Another work called White Sand, Red Millet, Many Flowers. Yeah. I was just exploring and thoroughly enjoying it, allowing myself to do whatever emerged. Objects made of earth and pigment, this sort of tongue form sticking out of the wall. A work called Six Secret Places. So these sort of spinning objects, my studio with all the drawings on the wall. And that's how I did it, was make drawings on the wall. Make drawings on paper, but often drawings on the wall. They didn't always refer to what I was making. I would make some of them and just watch the others of them and let them be there. And suddenly something, in the hope that something would emerge out of it. So let the practice kind of happen in that space of the studio. I should say I'm a workaholic. I work all the time. And not because I've got something I have to do, but because I'm looking for that space that allows things to emerge. I've been in psychoanalysis for 30, God knows, maybe more than 30 years. And I realized that in that continual repetition of psychic language, whatever one's bored to death with oneself, and then you go on, and something begins to happen that I didn't even know was there. And that kind of magic space, occasionally, it's rare, but when it happens, wow. Hole and Vessel, this one's called. Anyway. And then Mother as a Mountain, one of my favorite works from this period of time. This is sort of mid-80s, 84, 85. And all the drawings on the wall, of course. And then, one of my very last pigment works, bits of stone and pigment. It's a work called Wound. And then I felt, I've done this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I don't know what to do. So I went to the studio one day and made a big vessel, with almost no sense of what the hell I was doing. I cannot understand why. I put it on the wall and painted it a very, very dark blue. And suddenly, it was a space. Of course, this is a bowl like this. You can't hardly see it there, but a bowl like this on the wall. And what happened was that it became a space full of darkness. It wasn't an empty bowl painted blue. It was a space full of darkness. Something changed. Something happened. It's as if that fiction that I was working with of the iceberg object suddenly presented itself to me as the present absent object. And I began then, I felt, wow, this is a whole other way to think. It emerged, but I swear to you, I didn't think it. It happened to me through idiotic thing in the studio. I was just playing around, trying to see what I could do next. Of course, there it is from the side. You can just about see that it's as simple as can be, really. Of course, I have to, know and acknowledge that Yves Klein had painted canvases blue. But this was first of all not the same blue, but a blue. That was ultramarine blue, and this is deep Prussian blue. But they were, if you like, referring to the surface, and then what happens from the surface as it goes deep. Painting does that, isn't it? That it's about what happens here, and its space is always behind the canvas, there, that way. I was trying to point at something else, which is not painting, but darkness. So I continued to explore it in all sorts of ways, all the ways I could think of. At scale, a work called Madonna, for obvious reasons. And then to make them big enough, those are big, so to totally engulf the viewer. I then wondered if it was possible to do the opposite. What happened? What was to happen? What could happen if there was the possibility of making a space full of mirror? So I tried it. Avoid mirror. This one I think is called Iris. And it's surprising that it's a space full of mirror. It's not a mirrored object, it's a space full of mirror. Anyway, I was going to stick to early work, so these are later. It's a work called Vertigo. It turns the world upside down, and all that. Anyway, back to. So then I in my heart, I'm a sculptor, and I wanted to explore what happens with stone. I've been making works in stone for some time, and here is a work called I as in me. It's a voided stone, completely emptied out, with this small hole in the top. That is both about weight and absence of weight. And from that onward, a work called Void Field. A drawing from that sort of period. Where are we? Coming to the late 80s, early 90s, yeah. And then perhaps the best of those works were called Adam, which I owe a great deal to my dear friend Ed Cohen for. Bless you, Ed. A piece of stone stood up, obviously automatically has human reference. It's already the body. And then a void interior. It's hard to see in a photograph. You have to see the real thing. But that isn't a window. That's a flat plane that is full of darkness. And it's filled up right up to the surface of the stone, made in such a way or painted and done in such a way that you can hardly read that it's a negative space. It's work I'm hugely proud of, if I dare say so myself. And then exploring that idea further, those kinds of ideas further. Stones that weigh 2 and 3 tons, painted blue, is that enough to lift them off the ground and have them take off? Well, you know what? It is, if it's done in the right way. And then into the earth. This is some 1989 or something like that. A great big crevice in the ground. And perhaps the best work I've ever made. A work called Descent into Limbo. A building, 6 meters cubed, and you go in, and there's just that. It's a void in the floor that reads like a carpet. It isn't. And sadly, people who've visited this work, don't believe it, and somebody even tried to step on it, and of course, sadly fell into the hole. He was fine, but it wasn't great. But that's what's important about it, is this sense that it's a carpet on the floor. It's not a hole in the ground. That sense of a space full of darkness that goes infinitely to the beginning of things. That speaks, I hope, to extinction, to what is beyond us. Anyway, I'll shut up. Anyway, let me go on a little. The opposite, endless column. Obviously, Brancusi is eternally present. Brancusi's endless column going up into the sky. Here it is penetrating, if you like, the building, going from below and above. I'm only recording a few pigment works here. Another one here called Destiero, which is a room full of pigment with this monster sitting there. Anyway, I want to show you another later work, and then I'll come back to earlier works again. This is a work called Swayam. Swayam in Sanskrit means self-made. Why do I put it here? We in this city actually, Marcel Duchamp came up with the notion of the found object. That you take an object, because you're an artist, it's art. And that strange thing that we've done, if you like, in a world of I can dare say capitalist endeavor, where we claim and place objects as at the center. This notion, Swayam, is an idea about the self-generated object. That's what it means literally. Auto-generated. It's a fiction, like all these things are. So what did I do? I made a huge block of wax and pigment and paint mixed together, and forced it through the doors, the doors of this is the Royal Academy in London, of the building. And as it forced through the doors, it leaves, of course, all this stuff and forms itself into this object. When I first made it, I made it at the Haus der Kunst in Munich, which was, which was the museum that Hitler built. And that's the strange thing about meaning in art. It suddenly took on a whole other thing. It wasn't just a self-made object. It became a train. And we know what that's about, don't we? But this raw kind of, that's what being an artist is about. I really do believe it. Anyway, a work called At the Edge of the World. One of the artists I've always admired, and I'm sure we all do, is Jackson Pollock. Let me tell you my little story about Jackson Pollock, if I may. Jackson Pollock painted on the ground like that, as we all know. What did he paint with? Paint, we think, no. He painted with blood and semen. Forgive me, but it's deeply sexual and deeply, deeply ritualistic. And then what did he do? This is why he's a great artist. He took it off the floor and he put it on the wall. If you look at a good Jackson Pollock, what is it? It's cosmic. It's not about the earth. It's not about the ground. It suddenly becomes a vision of the universe. That transformative action is why he's a great artist, according to me. This thing of taking from the ground and putting on the wall. Simple act, and yet it changes everything. Everything. So, in my feeble way, I'm trying to say that we can make red, if you like. I can make red the color of earth, the color of blood, the color of what is physical and basic, into sky. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Turn red into sky. It's a very simple thing, and it's actually on show in Antwerp, if you're ever there. It's there kind of permanently, and this is a different version of it. And then Kobe, Origine du Monde. This is installed in Kanazawa in Japan, and of course I call it Origine du Monde. Kobe, the beginning of things, the feminine. And interestingly, of course, Lacan, the great psychoanalyst, owned that Kobe painting, which I think is always a lovely touch. But my great, great homage at one level has to be to Kazimir Malevich, the Black Square. What did Malevich propose? He proposed that the Black Square was a four-dimensional object, not three, four. That it reached somewhere else. We have, in the Renaissance, a great, well, we think of one great discovery, perspective. I suspect perspective has Islamic origins, but anyway, we'll leave that there. But there is another, which is the fold. The fold, that thing. Especially early Renaissance painting, and then, of course, into the Baroque and so on. The fold is the sign of the human, that is, the body. That is the thing that drapes us, that gives physical presence. I've been working with this black material, which is what this is, called Vanta Black, which is the blackest material in the universe. I mean, in the universe. Blacker than a black hole. It is not a paint, it's a technology. And I read this thing in the newspaper about this guy who discovered this black material. It was this big. And I wrote him a note and said, do you want to work with me? Or can I work with you, or whatever it is? And he said, well, it has nothing to do with art. We do this we're exploring objects in space. And, come on, work with me. Anyway, so we got going, and highly complicated, very, very difficult. Years and years, 10 years of work. And we managed to make things that are this big. Now, the interesting thing about this black material is that when you put it on a fold, whatever fold, you can't see the fold. My contention is that, like Malevich, it takes things to another dimension. That's why it's worth doing. That's the real artist project, it seems to me. So I'm going to end there. Thank you very much. Thank you.